Hey everybody, my name is Danielle and this is Chatter Out Loud. Thank you so much for joining me. Your presence is very much appreciated. So welcome back. Today I'm going to chat about the new original series on Hulu. It's called Reasonable Doubt. I wanted to chat a little bit about episode 3, so if you're interested, keep listening. Alright, so in my last recap review, I talked about the show, its origin and inspiration. I recapped episodes 1 and 2, where we were introduced to Jax Stewart, whom the series revolves around, and just what they have on the site here. Jax Stewart, the most brilliant and fearless private defense attorney in Los Angeles, juggles work, family, friends, and a complicated personal life while bucking the justice system at every chance she gets, as she's faced with a potential high-profile client and the ghosts of her past. All right, so in this episode, episode 3, is titled 99 Problems. We begin to see the pre-trial. Well, no, that's not what it's called. It's called a hearing. A hearing where the judge determines that there was enough evidence to proceed with a trial. We learned in episode 2 that Braden is a suspect in the murder of Kalisha, which is his mistress, and she worked for him. She was the AVP of his company. When we were introduced to Braden, he was seeking counsel at Jax's firm in an attempt to combat Kalisha's accusations of sexual assault. Right? So he went to their firm where Jax is a partner. He wanted them to draw up a payment settlement with an NDA. And then Braden was in the middle. He wanted to do that to keep the accusations from Kalisha under wraps, right? He was in the middle of an acquisition, which would have made him a billionaire. And he wanted to prevent Kalisha's accusations from getting out, potentially messing up that acquisition. Anyway, long story short, she declined to sign the papers in the office, and then Braden, he admitted going over there to change her mind. This was later on in the episode. He admitted to going over to her apartment to try to change her mind to get her to sign the papers, and he did change her mind. She wound up signing, and then she ended up dead. Now, obviously, part of the suspense is who killed Kalisha, right? I don't think he killed her because of the same point the lawyers made. She wound up signing the documents, so there was no motive, right? So why would he kill her? During all of this, we also watched Jax and Lewis go through their struggle in their marriage. They continue. Well, we're seeing more and more in episodes 1 and 2. We see some of the struggles that they go through and the issues in their marriage. And it's kind of unfolding more and more as the episodes progress, right? So Lewis feels that Jax doesn't prioritize him over her job. And Jax feels hurt because Lewis gave her an ultimatum, causing him to move out of the house. They keep up the charade in terms of like being this happy family that's together because they go to church every Sunday as a family. But the kids, Jax's mother and her friends all know that they're just putting on this show, right? Because they're separated. Lewis has his own apartment. All right. So in episode 3, it goes more into the pre-trial, right? Or the hearing that I talked about earlier. Jax and her legal team, they're diving in. They are tracking down potential suspects. They're establishing Braden's alibi, which, by the way, the team also has to convince Braden's wife, I think her name was Sarah, to stick around at least for the trial. She believed that Braden... Well, she believes what Braden told her. And he told her he didn't have an affair with Kalisha. And in this episode 3, it comes out, the truth comes out in terms of there's evidence that they're airing on the news. And of course, the wife feels betrayed, right? Because part of that evidence is that he did have an affair with her, right? And Jax tried to warn him early on to say, hey, you need to get ahead of this in terms of with your wife, right? Don't you think she's going to find out? but he opted not to say anything. The wife finds out on the news. She's ticked off now, right? And then Jax has to work to keep the wife around, right? Because normally we see in cases like this, it's better to have the spouse right next to you, right? During the whole trial. The thing is, the wife, she doesn't believe Braden killed Kalisha. So she's just going to stick around for the optics during the trial, right? We see the cousin, Morgan. This person's introduced. This is Kalisha's cousin. She's kind of suspicious, so they begin to surveil her. And at the end of this episode, Daniel, who's the PI, Jax's PI, gets caught by Morgan following her, right? And then Daniel begins, let me back up. They're followed. Morgan, Kalisha's cousin, is a bit suspicious, and they found some evidence and because part of this is Jax says, well, we want to find anything we can on Kalisha in terms of who's around her, so on and so forth. And so they find out about Morgan, who's a little suspicious to them. I think Morgan has a record and stuff like that. Anyway, so that leads Jax's team, Daniel, who's the PI for Jax's firm, to start to surveil Morgan. Anyway, long story short, he winds up getting caught by Morgan. And then Morgan, and I think her boyfriend, begins to beat him up at the end of this episode. And he happens to be on the phone with Jax saying, hey, I followed her. She's at a pawn shop and stuff like that. Anyway, so Jax hears him being beaten up. So we have to learn what happens after that. All right. Also in this episode, we see Damon. He encounters issues with his parole officer, right? Damon just got released for admitting that he killed someone that he didn't. And the reason he did that is because he just wanted to be out of jail. All right. So the guy was not so nice, the parole officer, with Damon. And apparently Damon's urine sample came up as inconclusive, right? And Damon feels like the parole officer is kind of setting him up, right? So the parole officer winds up searching Damon's room for drugs, and searching is a very light word here. The guy was throwing stuff around, ransacking his whole room, and that led to Damon calling in a favor to Jax, asking for help, right? So she was able to get him another parole officer. And that worked out in the end, right? So to me, again, I'll say that there's something between the two of them, some type of feelings, intimacy, something is going on there. And so we'll have to see how that unfolds as the episodes continue to air. With each episode so far, it's just confirming that there's something there, but we aren't quite sure what that is yet. They haven't shown anything yet. They're just teasing us right now. But I believe he likes her. She's entertaining him, right? And maybe because she lost his case when she was a public defender, not causing him, but as a result of losing his case, he went to jail. So maybe she feels guilt about that. I'm not sure, but we'll have to see. All right. One other thing we saw in this episode 3 is how Jax and Lewis come together when Naima, which is their daughter, or who is their daughter, gets her period for the first time. And Naima is 10 years old. Now, first of all, yeah, she looks older than 10, but that nevertheless, at 10 years old, she's getting a period. Like, that's so young, right? And that's how they reacted in the story as well. Initially, it was mistaken as gas. Maybe she's constipated, right? Because Naima was saying that her stomach hurts. Anyway, we see the guilt that Jax felt when she learned Naima got her period. But she put off telling her mom days before. She got her periods days before, and she put off telling her mom because she told her mom, well, she was too busy and she didn't want to bother her. And then we saw how strong that mother's guilt came into play, right? Because how awful does she feel like your baby couldn't tell you, what was going on because she didn't want to bother you? And that's tough. A lot of moms have that feeling with whatever is going on with their kids. And that's part of that mom's guilt. And so that scene where Jax was reacting to it, yeah, that was a good scene. And by the way, Lewis also was watching Jax have that emotion, and I think he felt some kind of way, but he was smoking his cigarette. Now, Lewis watches Jax on the security camera, and I may have left that out in episode 1 or 2. I don't know what's behind this. They alluded to this in an earlier episode, to this being them, right? But Jax said, well, no, Lewis, this is not who we are anymore. So I don't really know what's behind him watching her on the camera like that. But we'll find out soon for sure. I think it'll tie into the plot later on. So let's keep this in mind. All right, what else? I think that's it. So we're starting to see the beginning of Brayden's trial. Well, we know he's going to trial. We saw the hearing. He's going to trial. We're also following up on Damon and him being out of jail now, and the parole officer. He has a new parole officer. By the way, the shop that he works at, he's a mechanic. The owner there, I don't know if that's his cousin. I have to go back and watch. I don't know if it's a cousin, a friend, or whatever, but the cousin is dealing out of the shop, and Damon and him had a confrontation saying, where Damon was telling him, hey, listen, I don't need this in my life. I'm trying to, go on the straight and narrow, do something else. And so they get into kind of a tiff there, but something's happening in that mechanic, in that shop. And I hope it doesn't, get Damon into trouble, because he's not the one that's dealing there. So it's the friend or the owner or the cousin, whoever owns that shop that he works at. So we saw that. And what else are we seeing? We're seeing the parenting between or the co-parenting between between Jax and Lewis and this voyeurism. Like, why is he watching her on video? I don't understand it, but it's going to reveal itself sooner or later, right? All right, I think that's all that was in this episode. It was a good episode. There's more to come. I'll continue to watch. Lots of good stuff going on in Reasonable Doubt. It's keeping me interested. All right, Reasonable Doubt, streaming on Hulu with new episodes every Tuesday. Are you watching? You have to let me know your thoughts in the comment below. All right, and that's all I have. So be sure to come back and give me a listen. I love for you to like, share, follow, comment, and subscribe, all of which will help my channel grow. So thank you in advance. My name is Danielle. You're listening to Chatter Out Loud. Thank you so much for joining me. And as always, I appreciate your support. And that's all I have. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.